Harris's book, The Moral Landscape, is like talking to a really good friend while sipping tea on the front porch, having a good, healthy, engaging conversation about data that's available to everyone, but realizing you're coming to radically different conclusions. That's what I love about The Moral Landscape. Of all the atheists in the world right now that are popular or well-known, Sam Harris is one of my favorites. Just reading his book sounds like a really likable and enjoyable guy to have a conversation with. There are moments when he does get a little, antagonistic, but that's to be expected. Christians are antagonistic towards non-Christians, and atheists are antagonistic towards any religious belief that they disagree with. So that's to be expected. However, Harris is just really fun to read. I like his prose, I like how he frames his arguments, even though I fundamentally disagree with them. So what's the purpose of The Moral Landscape? In a nutshell, Harris is making the claim that science, particularly neuroscience, has all the answers for how we as humans should deal with morality. In fact, if we only look at science, we can have objective truth, and we can consider people's well-being as the baseline for determining what is good and evil. Here's the question. Does science, especially neuroscience, have all the answers for morality, good and evil, belief in religion? And the answer is, according to Harris, yes. Here's the problem. Harris's assumption is that religion, belief, or any type of theistic ideology is in and of itself bad, harmful, and wrong. And he does this by addressing certain individuals within those religious ideologies and how they have messed things up. And yet the reality is, if he goes to the actual sources, he's going to see that this argument ultimately falls apart. From here on out, I'm just going to address the Christian perspective of this text. So Harris, is it true that science has all the answers, or can have all the answers, or will someday have all the answers, especially in regards to morality? And the response that we have is no. Well, Harris's argument assumes that science has better explanatory scope than God, because God isn't real. Christians, we love science. In fact, some of the most important, well-known, and most thorough scientists have been Christians. That doesn't mean that atheists can't be scientists. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Has religion brought bad things into the world? Yeah, we recognize that. But Harris kind of downplays the terrible things that atheist Russia did and all of its madness, and also the Third Reich Nazi scientists, the horrible atrocities that they committed. In fact, he makes a statement that, scientists have occasionally done bad things. The question is, what is his standard for what's considered good and evil, right and wrong, true or false? And he brings it down to human well-being. What's the standard of human well-being? Well, imagine the worst thing and the best thing. Don't do the worst, do the best. Why? He doesn't ever really give an example. He just kind of assumes that people will generally agree with him. So if you're an atheist reading this book, it reads like preaching to the choir, and you're going to agree with him. It's not very convincing to a Christian, though, to jump ship and change our mind and go, well, I guess atheism and science has all the answer. The book is divided into 6 chapters: moral truth, good and evil, belief, religion, future hope. 6 chapters. There's an introduction. You should read that as well. The major problem that we have with Harris's book is this: interpretation, not science, determine human values. Harris makes the claim that humanity has meaning, value, and purpose, and he says why? Because we're human and we have meaning, value, and purpose. His circular reason is very frustrating. He also seems to affirm metaphysical ideas like good, evil, morality, even love and beauty, but these are things that are transcendent beyond the material world, and it boils down to interpretation. Again, interpretation is the main problem with Harris's book. We all have the data. We all have the information. The issue is, how are we interpreting it? And I think the main problem with Harris's argument can be found on page 164, which says, once the eyes of faith have opened, confirmation can be found everywhere. The problem is that the logical equivalent of that statement is also true and completely nullifies and invalidates his argument. The inverse of once the eyes of faith have opened, confirmation can be found everywhere is once the eyes of faith have been closed, confutation can be found everywhere. Harris is finding the answers and the interpretation that he wants because of his presuppositions and his worldview. To be fair, Everybody does this. Every person assumes that their worldview and their presuppositions are correct until they are confronted with a better interpretation or a better system that has more explanatory scope. The problem is that Harris doesn't do the greatest job of defending how his interpretation is better than a believer's. So I think you should read this book. If you are a Christian, I encourage you to pick this up at your local library or to purchase it. It's a great resource because it really does explain how pop culture atheism can be appealing, alluring, but ultimately empty and hollow. And the assumption that their interpretation is best because it doesn't include God, well, that's just as bad as their accusations that we think our explanations are better because it includes God. It falls apart, it's flat, and while Harris does a good job of gathering together the data, the argument just isn't that convincing. And if you're an atheist, again, you're going to love this book. If you're a Christian, you're going to disagree with it. It doesn't say anything new. It doesn't provide any alternative interpretations or any unique worldviews or attacks against Christianity. It's kind of the same old, but it's written so well. I think this is a great example of the powerful use of rhetoric that new atheists are using. And Harris may be one of my favorite at employing this. So I think you should read the book. I think that you should check it out. Cheers.